Speak Up for Oneness Australia, affiliated with Awaken to Oneness Radio in the United States. This program is dedicated to speaking up for oneness in the world. Oneness is a living awareness that we are all one. Many people are awakening across the world to realize what they see in their world is a reflection of themselves. As we take responsibility for our thoughts, words, and actions, we start to experience our world changing. Oneness is the lived experience of peace. My guest today on the show is Jane Offer. Jane is a practitioner in wellness and has worked in the industry for more than 40 years. She has run a centre in the United Kingdom. The centre was a not-for-profit organisation with 29 therapists and training available. She delivered government-funded programs, European social funding projects, and operated as a training college. Jane worked in the United States, Ireland, and all over the United Kingdom. She worked in prisons. Jane and her husband Dave came to Australia in 2007 to retire. However, they decided to open the Purple Dragonfly in Warrandyte, Victoria, Australia, to really contact like-minded people. Very quickly they ended up with a high-end team of very experienced practitioners working with them. Welcome to the program, Jane.
Thank you, Susan. Lovely to be here.
Now, first I'll just read out the quote from your website, which I think is very telling about really what your intention is. Our purpose is not to fix you in any way, because we do not presume you are broken. Instead, we work with you to find what is limiting you and holistically heal the situation. We offer an authentic, down-to-earth approach to health and well-being that empowers you as an individual. What a wonderful statement of intent, in that you're not fixing people, whereas usually in anything medical or healing orientated, people are seeking to be fixed.
Well, that's true, but people have the power within them to heal. And if they understand how they can pull on that power, then they never need another person to help them. You know, the Americans, if you were an American and you spelt the word guru, it would be G-U-R-U. And at the end of the day, you are you, and you know yourself better than anyone.
So that's really at its core empowerment.
Exactly.
And returning people to themselves.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your journey. First, we might start off with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about where you have come from?
Well, I originally came from the UK, of course, with the accent, you can tell. And we came out here in 2007 to retire. And as you can see, that didn't work. I don't like retirement. I like to be busy, and it really is almost like a mission to help people to find who they are. And I was an only child, so I grew up a lot on my own. So I had my own thoughts and feelings, and that didn't always go down very well with the family, but that's just how it was. And then my daughter became sick when she was 12, 13, and we couldn't find a cure for her through the normal channels. So it took me on the journey of finding holistic health, natural ways to help her, and she cured her.
What was her illness?
She had Epstein-Barr, which is post-viral syndrome, and in those days it was known as yuppie flu, and a very new syndrome. So there wasn't a lot of help available. And just through a whole series of different people that I met, it just took us on this fabulous journey, and she came out at the end of it very holistically minded, and she knows her body very well. And so as soon as she starts to feel not right, she knows what to do, and so it empowered her, and so I saw it working in action. And we just carried on then. People got to hear about it, came to us with those illnesses and many others, and it built up to, through our house, about 200 people a week coming through there for various healing modalities and meditation. And it was a very interesting and exciting time.
Now, going back to your daughter, what was it that cured her?
It was a combination of geopathic stress, or environmental stress was impacting on her, Her body was leaching out magnesium at a very fast rate, and also psychologically she was in a place of low self-esteem, but she was setting the bar really high for herself and the pressures around her at school and so on. And so the combination of the three, there's usually a recipe for each person as to contributory factors.
And who was the practitioner that helped her?
I accidentally, if there is such a thing, met the PA of Dr. George Lewis, who was the leading expert at the time in the country, and he had a Harley Street practice, and so we went to see him, and she was a classic case for it, and he determined that she was losing the magnesium. So through him we did that. The dowser, we moved the bed and got her in a good place to sleep, and the psychological stuff, we worked with her a lot and to get her to that stage.
And then from there, as you said, you had 200 people visiting your house with all sorts of problems.
Yes.
And what sort of healing were you doing there?
Well, we did the meditation, we did a contact healing, which is hands-on healing. We had a couple of therapists, massage therapists and so on, and also an holistic energy therapist.
And can you explain a little bit about hands-on healing, what that does, contact healing?
Contact healing is where the person delivering the healing is a conduit for the energy that is freely available to everyone to flow through them into the client, and for the client's body then to take it where it needs to be. So the healer herself or himself doesn't need to be involved in deciding where they're healing or what they're healing or even how, just being willing to become the conduit.
And whereabouts do you put your hands?
We were using a three-way method. So with three people, you would keep your hands still. If you're just doing it on your own, you would just move wherever you intuitively feel is the best place. Because, if somebody's hurt them, a child has hurt their knee, they don't want you touching their shoulder, they want you to kiss their knee better. So yes, you would move your hands towards where the pain is, probably. But with a three-way method, no, you couldn't do that, because if somebody's laying there with their eyes closed and you've got 6 hands roaming about over your body, it's a little bit stressful.
And how do you know that you healed people?
Just by the results. They feel better, they look better, their skin's a better colour, their eyes are shining, and slowly but surely over the time, they gain the strength for themselves. It's like anything, you have to be part of that process yourself. It's not for somebody to do it to you, it's to do it with you.
And how did you feel personally when you saw successes happening through this type of healing?
Well, there's no such thing as an unconditional act, is there? Because you always get a really good feel-good factor from it. But it was almost magical, which I find life is magical anyway. Every day is an adventure, and because you never know what you're going to learn that day. And I said to my grandson not so long ago, every day you want to learn something. It's what I've always lived by. And so he's doing the mental calculations, 70 years of 365 days. Oh my word, that's 250,000 facts or something he'd come up with, So he said, you must know a lot, Nana. And I said, well, I just know what I know.
So there you've gone from 200 coming to your house. You moved away from there. What happened?
Well, we had to buy a commercial centre, something that had got planning permission for that level of traffic. And so we moved into the next village across, and that had 8 therapy rooms, a large training room and a few offices and a reception area. And people just started to come. The very first lady that came through the door was a lady who lived in the village. She was an elderly lady who had asthma, but she also had a leg ulcer, and she'd been having it treated for 2 years, and it was being bandaged daily because she needed to have it treated. And so we recommended that she just applied honey to it for a week, which she did, and by the end of the week the ulcer had gone.
What was the most amazing healing that you've witnessed?
Well, oh gosh, that's a hard question because there are so many. many uplifting ones. There was one lady who came with brain cancer, and she'd been given 3 months to live. And she lived for 4 years, and in that time she ran a half marathon. She made a CD that to raise money for cancer awareness. She healed a huge rift in her family. And then one weekend she said to her husband, "I'm done now." And she went to bed on the Friday night and died on the Sunday morning. No pain, no medication, no nothing. So that in its sense is magical. And then another one, the very last client that we had was a baby who'd been born with all her organs on the outside of her body.
Wow.
So she had an operation on the first day to put it all back in, but they told the parents that the kidneys would never function and that ultimately she would need a kidney transplant. And within a month the kidneys were functioning normally, and so that was another amazing case. And sometimes you're healing people to die and bring them peace for that end, and sometimes you're healing them towards living.
It's a very interesting experience, isn't it? And you're surrounded by 29 therapists who all have different healing expertise.
Absolutely.
So it must be an interesting community to be part of.
It really was, and what it enabled us to do was to put together a program for each client that was unique to them. So because there was no ownership of the client, we always said the client is the client of the centre, not of one practitioner. And whatever that person needed, they each fulfilled that space. And of course the recipe was different for everyone.
It's really interesting that you say that, because when I read some information about Patch Adams, who's the famous clown doctor, he said that he also created a healing centre, which was a community.
Yeah.
He's even got an environmental garden out the back. They all sort of use the plants as part of the healing.
Yeah.
And he said someone comes in and whoever's got the expertise comes and works on them. So it's very holistic in its approach. So it's quite different from just one doctor if you went into a hospital or a medical.
And it's really important as well that the client, the patient, is the central figure, and that they are part of this process, not just having it done to them. They have to be part of it, and you engage them in their own work. So they get to know who they are and their strengths. People are incredibly resilient, and they're amazing, but they just don't always realise that. You know, life experience sometimes moves you away from knowing that.
Now, you've also done work with young people who are drug affected and also in prisons. Can you speak a little bit to that?
That was probably one of the most impactful experiences that we had. We were engaged to do an 8-week program in the local prison on the young offenders drug unit. And the first time we went in and we saw these boys, because they were young, they were like our own children, you know, the same ages as our own sons. And as we got to know them, we found the reasons why they'd gone into drugs, which often the people working with them didn't know. One was through profound grief, another one was through guilt. And we just helped them to find that. And on the very first day, there was one young man, and we'd asked them to do some colouring in. And he said, "I don't do colouring in." And he refused. And he had, when we talked to him, he'd never played in his life. He'd never been in that position. And by the end of the course, he was able to play and to see fun. Another one was very judgmental and saying that depression was an excuse. As one of the other people involved, his girlfriend had dumped him while he was in prison, and he was depressed about it. But something very similar happened to him, and he also felt that same level of depression, and they formed a friendship, and they would spend time discussing and talking, and they really made a very strong bond. So the magic happened in many different ways, and one of the clients that we worked with actually came to see us at the centre with his family, his child and his wife, after he'd been released, and he said it was a life-changing experience for him. And we also had a letter from another prison somewhere else in the country, where one of them had been transferred to and taken his manual, and this guy had read it and wrote to us and asked if we could come and do a similar program there. but unfortunately it's all government funded, and so you're governed by that. So we couldn't do that, but it was really uplifting. And then we went to Ireland and worked on the Women Lifers wing, and that was very interesting as well. A very different type of prison, and they were just beautiful women, you know. But sometimes we make choices that lead us down a path, and who are we to say whether it's the right or the wrong path? Outwardly it might look like a wrong path, but maybe it's the learning that we need and the experience that we need to have.
So that's a really interesting statement, given that we live in a society that believes in punishment, that you have to be punished, and that's coming from a principle of right and wrong,
yes,
or morality. So for those who are listening who might think, well, if we didn't have that, then everyone would just do whatever they want. What would you say to that from a healing perspective?
Well, I think the experience is that certainly, you know, when you hear people say, oh, they're just druggies or whatever, they're missing the point of the fact that these people have made choices that they can observe, and it's led them down a path. We can then look at those choices and not go down that path ourselves. So there is a gift in that. It doesn't make it right, wrong, it just is as it is. Also, those people, that when they pull themselves out of it, it shows incredible strength. And so it is really an apprenticeship to life. We all go through traumas in one way or another. And what the guys in the prison actually pointed out to us, which is really a valid point, that drugs are a release technique from stress, and everybody has their own. And it could be alcohol, it could be gambling, but it could equally well be being a workaholic, shopping, being sick, sex. It could be any of those things, but some are socially acceptable and some aren't. So the differentiation, really, when you think about it, there is no difference. It's just a technique.
It's interesting to also explore that thought of addiction, isn't it? When we have something that we have to have, and we have to have it to feel good.
Yeah.
But I guess not being able to find that sense of feeling good from within your own self.
But it's happening too. I mean, from my own experience, my mother was a very much a sugar addict, and I was born right at the end of the war, where there had been rationing. And so she used sugar as a reward, because to her it was something really great. And so once I wasn't living at home, I would continue this reward process by having sugary stuff without even realising what I was doing. And I was sitting in the garden one day and having demolished half a packet of biscuits, thinking I wasn't even hungry, why did I do that? And it suddenly dawned on me why, that it was a pattern, it was a reward pattern. And it made me feel good. But it actually didn't do much for my hips, I can tell you.
So that's really fascinating. So you spent how many years in the UK with the centre that you started?
We started in the house around 86, and we were there until 2006.
So it was called the Natural Health Centre, wasn't it?
It was called Spectrum Health.
Oh, Spectrum
Health Trust.
Yeah. Fantastic. So what happened after that?
The year, in 2006, my mother died. She had been living with us for that year. So I was an only child, and she was my last relative that would hold me there. My daughter moved from America to Australia to live, and I hit 60, and I thought, okay, time to retire. How foolish was that? So we decided that we would come and attempt to live in Australia, and when we arrived we absolutely loved it, and so we battled to stay, but we got there in the end. It was very difficult to leave the centre and to shut it down, because there was no one that could take it over, because it was too complicated. There were too many aspects to it. No one would take it on, and it took me a long time to get over the grief of that, because I didn't feel the job was finished, that there was still more to do. And then I was sitting with someone, and they said to me, you have no idea how many lives you've touched, because you will never know. Because not only is it the individual that you've treated, it is their family, and then the people that come behind them, their children. So it will affect in multidimensional levels. And I thought, oh yeah, very nice. You know, I didn't really take that on board too well. And then I had a phone call from a friend of mine who had organised some tours in America for us. And she had talked about it, she was also English, and she had talked about this gentleman who had been on one of my training programs, on the healing training. And he had set up, and I had no idea about this, he had set up a healing organisation that had branches all over England. And they were teaching through that course. So it had touched people that I had no idea. And it made me realise, and so I could let that go then.
Mm. And of course your training work was accredited, wasn't it?
It was, yes. We aligned with a local college because they were churning out 90 people a quarter to do therapy. And everybody and their dog had a massage therapist in their family. And these people were then trying to find work. And the college was requiring them to come and do work placement. And it's very difficult then to release someone that we don't know, untried and untested, on clients that are sick. Mm-hmm. But there was also a flaw in their training, that there was no energy work being taught. There was no protection of their own energy for the therapist to make certain that their energy was clean and clear. So they were becoming sick. There was no understanding of the energy systems in the body. So the teachers had agreed with us that there needed to be a program. So I wrote this program to put in as an attachment to the course. And we didn't hear anything for a long time. So I thought, how am I going to get the principal of the college down? So I sent him an invoice for my time. And he was down the next day. What was this all about? And I said, this is about the fact that these people aren't getting jobs, that they are becoming sick. And his attitude was, well, that wasn't his problem, that his was getting the funding for the courses and to get the numbers through the college that got the funding. And I thought, we're never going to fight this. This is a mental set that we just can't fight. So we aligned with a different college and we did it our way. And within the framework of what they needed, but we put in a lot of additional modules to the training.
So fast forwarding to Australia, you moved from the UK to Australia as your daughter moved from the United States to Australia, and you were planning on retirement, and then what happened?
Well, we started to do workshops from home again and therapies from home, and but there wasn't enough contact with people for my liking, because I love people. I like to know their story and who they are and what they're about. And so I bought a shop, which I ran for 4 years, and then my manager bought me out. And I thought, oh, here comes retirement again. This is good. And that lasted a year, and I just couldn't do it. So then this shop became available, and so we created this little hub here.
Why did you call it the Purple Dragonfly?
Oh, well, that was a big story too, because I couldn't find a name at all, because it had to fit with numerology, but it also had to be not a name that anybody else used. And dragonflies had always been meaningful to me. Dragonflies signify change, but they also remind us that life is very short and to live it to the full, because dragonflies' lives are very short. So I've always loved them, and every time I come to a point of thinking now, is this a good idea? A dragonfly will present itself. And the very first living creature that came through the door on the day that this shop was completed was a dragonfly, and it flew around for about an hour and then just flew out the door as they were clearing up all the painting gear to move out.
Wow.
So the dragonflies have always been very, very meaningful.
And what about the colour purple?
Well, I just love purple. Bit biased there.
So you've been here, how many years have you had this shop?
We're coming up for our second year, and it's been a very interesting journey. There's been lots of shifts and changes. The focus has shifted a little, And the new paradigm has really begun to hit. So these therapists that are here are now beginning to work with the higher levels of consciousness, and the clients that are coming in are all on some sort of journey at some stage of really trying to find who they are, but seriously doing that.
So really, I guess the essence of all of this is finding out who you really are.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that begs the question, who are we?
We just are.
Yes, but beyond that.
Well,
for those who don't know.
For my belief is that we're all interconnected, that we all come from the same source, we're all created from the same essence and energy. And then we each become individual and take our own journey. And that journey is unique to us, and it is always the correct journey. And
what sort of evidence has validated that for you, that that's true?
I think it's the diversity of people, that people can have very similar experiences but actually translate it extremely differently. You can see it in any family. I mean, I've got no brothers and sisters, but I know people that have got several brothers and sisters, and an event will happen and they will discuss the event. Each one of them will have heard something different, seen it differently, and have translated it from their own framework very differently. So some will be upset by it, some will be angered by it, some will be saddened by it, some won't take any notice at all. So, the family is only a microcosm of a bigger picture.
Now, what you didn't mention in your sort of your statement in the beginning was that you've also been a counsellor and a teacher.
Yeah, that was my job. That was my proper job.
That was your proper job. And how does that bear on this type of work that you do now?
Well, the teaching is because that's where my passion lies. I love to teach the courses. I write the courses and teach a lot of them. The counselling, I wanted to understand in the framework of normality, how people's brains are supposed to work. And in looking at that, I realised that we are far more different than even that takes into consideration. Bearing in mind that the training was done a long time ago, I mean, we're talking about in the 70s. And I didn't particularly like the way the training was done. It was too regimented and didn't take in enough of the differences for me. And so I didn't actually do too much of it at the time, but it was very helpful in the teaching, because I was teaching primary children. My first husband became ill at one point, and I had to then go and run the family business, and I left teaching, which made me very sad because I loved it. I never lost the joy of watching a child go from seeing these squiggles on the page that made no sense to suddenly it all made sense, and it was all about the cat next door or whatever the story was. And that look of absolute joy as they can do it. And that's what I love to see when we're doing things about perhaps the chakras or using a pendulum or whatever it may be, that they get it. And suddenly you see this same look of joy of, wow. And that's what drives me, I think.
Mm. Just thinking back over your life, what would you say have been really key, critical turning points?
Probably having my children was one of the biggest ones. They have been my greatest teachers. I have a boy who's, he's 57 this year, and my daughter who's 43, he's 47, not 57, good lordy. Oh dear, he wouldn't be pleased, would he? He's 47, and they're both very different. Both needed to be dealt with in very different ways, and it's very difficult to be seen to be fair with that sort of situation. So they taught me a huge amount. He rings me he lives in America, and he rings me every week and talks to me, which is lovely. And I live with my daughter. We live in the same house together with her family, so that's really beautiful.
Any other critical turning points that you would refer to?
Oh, probably divorce. After 30 years of being with one man, it just sort of faded away, and that was it. Still have contact with him. Absolutely love his wife. She's just the most beautiful person, and he's a really decent, nice guy, and I'm fortunate to be married to another really great guy. So that was a big thing, because it was very scary. You know, after 30 years, it's a big step into a big change. Both of my children were living abroad at the time, and we had got the centre, so it was a bit of a shock. Even though, you know, it was just meant to be, obviously. So that was a big thing. And yeah.
Okay, so thinking about oneness, what do you think it actually means?
Oneness is again a multi-tiered concept. I think there is the oneness with self, which is very important, because if you're aligned with who you are and you live that truth with every breath, everything just flows, and the lessons that we're here to learn take on a very different dimension. They're not then the challenges, the difficult challenges. They can be hard, but there is a purpose behind them. I think it also means that you're connected to every other human being, whether they're living or have lived or will live, that it's just this huge matrix of connection, and that we're also at one with the planet, with nature, and with the source of our existence, whatever that source, whatever you choose to call it. Some call it God, some call it Buddha, Allah, whoever it may be, it doesn't matter. It's the oneness, that one thing that is the source of all.
And how has that changed the way you've seen the world and others?
To be honest, it's what I've always known from a child. I can remember being able to see spirit as a child.
What was that like?
Because we lived in the middle of nowhere, and there were no children to play with, I spent a lot of time on my own. So they were like people that I knew, just like a circle of friends.
Could you actually see them?
I could see them, yes.
What did they look like?
Just human beings, men, women, children, just all different. They would talk to me.
What sort of things would they say?
Just, sometimes there was one woman, one female, that if I'd played up and been a bit naughty, she'd, put me straight. The children we'd play, so it was just, some could say it's imaginary friends, but to me they were very real.
Did you see spirit throughout your life?
Until I was 42. That was the last time I saw anything solid on a regular basis. It was a small child, and I was ironing in my kitchen, and it looked out over the driveway beside the house, and I saw this child walking up the drive, and I thought, what are they doing out there? And I went out, and of course there was nobody there, and then I realised, thinking back on it, that the child wasn't dressed as a modern day child, and it was a very old house. It was built in the 1600s, so I presume it was some child that had lived there at some point. And that was the last time I saw it, and I was very angry when that went, and very upset, because I thought, what have I done? Why has this been taken away from me? And of course, as we always do, we blame the other side of life, and it's got to be their fault. And then it was shown to me very clearly that it's about trust. And whilst I could see, I didn't need to develop my sense of trust as deeply as you do when you don't see. It's coming back now.
How is it? So you're having experiences recently?
Yes, when I'm working, I can see.
What are you seeing when you're working, and what sort of work are you doing?
I do a thing that has morphed out of counselling. I call it soul mastery, and it's like a 4-session program where we take the person through from their own individual point of view. So we look at numerology, we look at the name, and then we look at their belief systems and how that's affecting their progress forward. And then we use visualization to break the power that's holding them back. Sometimes when I'm doing visualizations, I will feel another person come in that is to do with them, maybe somebody who's passed. I will use cards as well in that reading, and then it sort of just takes over. a voice comes through. I don't know what that is. Just
You
go
don't know
with
what
it.
it is, just go with
Just
it.
go with it. That's the trust. You
Yep.
just build that trust. And I think that's what that was all about. That whilst you're relying on something physical, you're not actually going within and building that within yourself. And that's what we try and do with people, to build that inner trust in their own intuitive knowing of what is right for them, and to start to live it within their own framework and not try and accommodate other people's frameworks, because it doesn't work.
So what would you say are the key life lessons that you've learned?
Well, trust, of course. Learning not to judge, I think, has been a big one. That people are where they're at, and it's absolutely okay. Everything is what it is. So whether they are making decisions that for me would be inappropriate, that doesn't matter. They're appropriate for them, so it's not my business. And the one that I struggle with and I'm still working on is patience. So, yeah.
And what sort of healing modalities do you do here at the Purple Dragonfly?
We do quite a diverse range. We have homeopathy, because it works on a vibrational level.
What is homeopathy?
Homeopathy is treating the person from their own uniqueness, who happen to have a condition, rather than treating the condition. So you're working with the person's makeup rather than the condition, and then the condition naturally just goes away.
So when you're working with their makeup, what sort of things would you be doing?
Well, we have the homeopath. She's a multifaceted practitioner. She's also a life coach. She can use flower essences. She uses obviously straightforward homeopathy. She'll use astrology, because that helps you to find how the person's personality type works, the archetypes, the parts of the person that are presenting at the time. So it's a multifaceted approach, and I have had treatment with her, I must admit, and it's very good. She's been very helpful for me. She works a lot with children too, this new wave of children that are coming in that are just very sensitive, both physically and emotionally. That these children just seem to get it. I don't know. They come out with the most amazing things.
They do.
They do indeed.
What other healing modalities would you do here?
We do massage, reflexology, the usual ones. We do crystal balancing. We have a crystal light machine and a guy who works with light and colour. We have Petra, who does sensitive resonance therapy, which is through dowsing, but she also does a lot of soul path working, that sort of thing. We have artists, we have jewellery classes, so there is something for everyone. We do children's classes as well, just to help them to keep in touch with who they are. So whatever is necessary, we do.
That's great. And the last question is, what do you see in the future?
For me personally, or for the
Both.
world, or
Both.
Oh well, I think that the dreams I've had, I will see fulfilled in my lifetime to a degree.
What are those dreams?
That people will begin to understand the power they actually do have, and that they can step into that, and it's not selfish, it's not anything other than just being in that oneness. For the world, I see that happening too. I can, over many years, remember that old, that I remember Jermaine Greer coming, and the difference for women that has come over these years. When I was young, if you were lucky to get an education because you were going to get married anyway, so why bother? Certain careers, teaching certainly was one of them, that if you got married, you had to give up because they only had single teachers. That had begun to change when I started in the 70s. There's been a lot of shift in the power of women, which is probably the biggest thing that I've seen, and the shame that was put on women in my generation if you had a child out of wedlock, which saddens me greatly because there's so many damaged women, and I had clients that were in their 80s that had never got over having to give their child away, and that's just so hard.
So what will the future look like, do you think? Casting your mind into the future and what you've learned over your life and the various influences.
I think that there'll be more feminine energy in governance. I think that's going to be, I'm not saying there's going to be more women, but I think the men that are in it are going to come from that same feminine, more compassionate aspect. I think people will take more responsibility for themselves, certainly for their health, and make some more thought out choices, conscious choices. But more and more I've seen people on this journey realising they're on a journey to find who they are. And that from when we started to now is the change has been phenomenal.
So if anybody would like to contact you and check out your website, what's the best way?
The website is www.thepurpledragonfly.com.au. We're on Facebook. That gives the contact details. You can phone in. And the one thing we have is a lot of time. And the staff here will give time to talk to people and to try and find the thing that is going to be best suited to them within the framework of the client.
So if they want to call you, what number would they reach you on?
It's 03 9844 5294.
And if they want to email you?
Jane@thepurpledragonfly.com.au.
That's very simple. Well, Jane, what a wonderful story. You've had
Thank
an
you.
enormous experience, and I wish you much happiness and peace in the future, and thank you for all that you've done for so many people.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.